Well, as you know, the situation in Northern Ireland still has not been resolved. There still hasn't yet been an announcement of when the next general election could be as of this moment, at least at the time of doing this. I'm not sure if there has been. There's still rumors that there are negotiations going on behind the scenes trying to get at least maybe something going. But of course, as we've said before, the DUP are absolutely refusing to budge on any of this. And let's be clear, the problem here is the DUP. It is the DUP who backed a super hard Brexit and then are now refusing to face the consequences of the very decision that they not only backed, but they have even helped to implement. That is the very root of this problem. And unless the DUP actually seriously want to face up to that, then this problem isn't going away anytime soon. And here we have the Taoiseach of Ireland coming out and saying that maybe the power sharing agreement in Northern Ireland is no longer fit for purpose. And I have to say, I agree with him. How is it fair to the people of Northern Ireland who currently, like everyone else, not in the UK, but in Ireland as well, going through a cost of living crisis, the energy crisis, you name whatever other crises may be going on in Northern Ireland right now, they do not have a functioning government able to actually deal with the problems over there. How is it fair that the DUP can just hold the entire government hostage because they do not like the Brexit agreement, which they liked and they signed up to and now don't want to enforce? So, of course, there are deeper problems really going on here in Northern Ireland than just this. But I think these comments do and are worthy of attention, and I think we should cover because there's also a very other and very worrying stark admission here in this paper, which, if it is true, if it was what we see in this report is true, we could have far, far larger problems that we need to sort out. And we'll get to that when we come to it. But oh boy, this is one thing that we were worried about back in 2016, which could be a potential consequence of a hard Brexit, which the Leavers said, oh, don't worry, Northern Ireland, not going to be a problem. But before we do get into this, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And of course, thank you very much to all those people who do help support the channel. And of course, down below, there are links to the thank you button and, of course, the YouTube subscription called the Pony Club, where you can join that as well and you help support the channel. So, as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support that way. Now, on with this. So this comes from The Guardian reporting this with the title of Northern Ireland Power Sharing System Not Fit for Purpose, says Irish PM. And I agree. I think the DUP are exemplifying why it is no longer indeed fit for purpose. So Ireland's Prime Minister said that the unique system of power sharing between the Unionists and Nationalists in Northern Ireland is no longer fit for purpose and should be reviewed. The system, which imposes a mandatory coalition of representation from the two communities, was devised over 24 years ago as part of the Good Friday Agreement, under which the paramilitaries on both sides agreed to swap the bullet for the ballot box. Recently, there have been complaints that it does not give equal power to all political parties. The Taoiseach, Micheál Martin, said that for more than 2 decades, it may no longer reflect the needs of the communities, as other parties, including the Neutral Alliance Party, is now the third biggest in the country, have gained ground. And that is, I think, the biggest situation of this, that you've got this Alliance Party, this very much neutral faction, is now the third biggest in the country, and they don't get representation. So it really is no longer just fit for purpose on that point alone. But of course, going back, of course, to the DUP holding this entire system hostage, yeah, it's not fair to the people of Northern Ireland. So there is a reason why all this power sharing came in the early years, Martin said in an interview with the Financial Times. There is room for the parties to look at changing the system. The system does polarize and it is not fit for purpose. The electoral system should not be one that constantly reinforces polarization. In 1998, the peace deal to establish power sharing and the system based on a constitutional mode of democracy designed by the political scientist Aldrin Liebhardt, I think that's how you say, for the societies emerging from conflict. Under the rules, the key decisions must have backing from unionist and nationalist parties, with no explicit support required from the emerging third party. The Alliance leader, Naomi Long, said earlier this year that the party's emergence as one of the largest in Northern Ireland had raised questions over power sharing structures. Martin's remarks do come as Northern Ireland faces another hiatus in the power sharing system owing to the boycott from the Democratic Unionist Party in a row over the Northern Ireland Protocol. And let's be straight here. Let's say the Northern Ireland Protocol wasn't an issue. I think that the DUP would maybe have done this, but they wouldn't have forced another election. I think maybe they would have done it symbolically, maybe for like a couple of days, maybe a week, but there is no way they would have gotten away with it doing it for this long. It all comes down to the Northern Ireland Protocol and the Brexit deal that they backed and refusing to admit that this entire situation, the one thing that they hate the most, they are refusing to admit is their problem. They backed it, they supported the ERG, they helped take down Theresa May, and now they're in a hard Brexit, which they wanted, but cannot accept the consequences of what they wanted. So back to this then. After the DUP failed to agree to return to the Assembly's executive by the deadline last Friday, the Northern Ireland Secretary Chris Hayton Harris announced that there would be fresh elections. But he declined to name a date, fueling speculation that Rishi Sunak may yet sanction the emergency legislation to delay an election. None of the political parties support an election, fearing that a campaign will do little to actually change the result of May's election and will further polarize communities at a time of national cost of living crises. Remember, this is why I said it is not fair for them to do this. Like, the people of Northern Ireland deserve a functioning government. And the DUP holding it hostage over the Northern Ireland Protocol is not acceptable. And this is where it gets worrying. On Monday, the Belfast Telegraph reported that a loyalist attack on a government target in the Irish Republic was allegedly called off at the last minute. So think about that for a second. There was potentially going to be a terrorist attack over this. That's how serious this is getting. And I do not think that especially the ERG or even the Brexiteers really actually appreciate the Pandora's box they have opened for this. Because they were responsible for egging on the ERG and then eventually just throwing them under the bus when Boris Johnson came along. And even the DUP do have to admit their culpability in creating this situation as well. And the fact that apparently, again, according to the Belfast Telegraph, was a real possibility is incredibly worrying. Incredibly worrying. It is said that paramilitary leaders stood down the plan after the Northern Ireland office confirmed the statement on Friday that there was going to be no plans for Dublin to take joint authority with London to run the Northern Ireland during the Stormont suspension. Hilton Harris will be in Belfast on Tuesday to hold talks with the Stormont party leaders to discuss how the public services can continue to run, and again hinting at pay cuts for absent members of the Legislative Assembly. He will meet the Irish Foreign Affairs Secretary Simon Coveney later this week. The high-level talks between the EU and the UK aimed at solving these issues over the protocol do continue, with hopes at a settlement before next Easter, and that may be too late. And of course, the 25th anniversary of the peace deal and the prospective visit by the US President Joe Biden. Under the power sharing rules, the first and deputy first minister have equal powers, and one cannot be in a position without the other. The rule that has resulted in the Stormont executive or cabinet collapsing in February was when the DUP withdrew its first minister. And you can see how serious this situation is going. You can see how serious this is becoming now. And this is on the Brexiteers. And I think this should be a message that is sent, that this, if there is a terrorist attack, this is on the Brexiteers. They have done this. They knew that this would cause problems, even though they claimed at the election, Northern Ireland's not going to be a problem. Why did they say it wasn't going to be a problem? Because the Leave position during the referendum was very clear. They said it multiple times. Again, you know what I'm about to say. It's my favorite quote from Daniel Hannan. Only a fool would leave the single market and customs union. And that was the official Leave position, that we were going to be staying in the single market and customs union. So, of course, Northern Ireland wasn't going to be a problem. But then what did they do? They pushed hard. And as we've talked before about what happens during revolutions, the zealots take control and they push for more and more and more. And because Theresa May, Boris Johnson, even Rishi Sunak are going to eventually give in to these hardcore zealots over Brexit, even David Cameron must be lumped in with those. We are going to potentially see, unfortunately, a return to violence in Northern Ireland. And that should not be acceptable. That should be condemned. And it is entirely the fault of the DUP and the Brexiteers who've pushed for this hard Brexit, which no one in 2016 would have ever have voted for. And they know it. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.